Hey, hello to my friends and Pega partners from all over the world. Welcome to the High Fidelity Blueprint and Why It Matters edition of the Pega Partner Hour, a monthly webinar that provides Pega partners with support in the sales, technical, and industry domains. Today, we have a special edition of Blueprint Delivered, and we have another very special guest that's going to pop in to talk a little bit about another webinar series that it's important that you all know about. I also say we have, looking at some of the registrations, we probably have 100 new folks that have registered for the episode today. So welcome, and thanks for signing up and showing up to hear what we have to say. As a reminder, we'll be recording this session. If you prefer not to be recorded, please feel free to drop from the call, and you're welcome to watch the recording at a later time. You can find them on the Pega Partner portal and on our YouTube channel at Pega Partner. As a reminder, registration is open for Pega World. It's held this year in Las Vegas, June 7th to June 9th. So please don't get left out. It is simply our best event of the year. All right, so before we get into High Fidelity Blueprint and Blueprint Delivered, I'd like to make a quick introduction to my friend Nicole Rothermill, who's going to tell you a little bit about an upcoming webinar series. Again, that is incredibly important for us all to jump into. Nicole?
Thank you so much, Randy. I'm very excited to be here, and I really appreciate the time to talk about this. So let me make sure you can see my screen. All right. So Scott and Anthony are going to review some Blueprint Delivered concepts on our call today, and I want to make sure you're all aware of an upcoming opportunity to learn even more and do a deeper dive into this content. So what it is we're calling it the PartnerCast Blueprint Delivered Methodology. It's a hands-on interactive 5-session webinar series designed to help partners move from business vision to a running Pega application rapidly using the Blueprint Delivered methodology. It will emphasize practical engagement, experiential learning and gamification, and clear pathways to further enablement and resources. It's going to be fun. It's going to be very interactive. We're going to have gamification. Each episode opens with a real-world partner pain point or use case, and from there we solve it live, moving from high-fidelity blueprints, which Anthony will tell you more about, through import and build end to end. This isn't a passive webinar series. It's built for active participation by our own Pega delivery practitioners who are using this every day. So the target audience is anybody in Pega business delivery practitioners, anybody who's in the ecosystem, as well as sales and pre-sales teams. Our primary goal here is to raise awareness of the Blueprint Delivered methodology across our partner ecosystem so that you can make this vision a reality. Series is going to help you understand the value of Blueprint Delivered methodology and how to position it. We're also going to make sure you know about all of our resources that are available for Blueprint Delivered. So if you get stuck in the process, you know where to go and who to go to. And best of all, if you attend all 5 sessions, you're going to get a badge on your Pega profile. So check your inbox. You may have already gotten an invitation to this series from your partner manager. If you didn't, you can go directly to the event registration page on Pega Community under events. I'm also going to put the link in the chat in a moment so that you can grab it from there if you want to. You do need to register for each session individually, so don't just sign up for the kickoff. Make sure you sign up for all 5 sessions. And we do have 2 convenient time zones for you to choose from depending on where you're at. We kick off the series next Tuesday, and we really hope to see you there. Thank you so much, Randy.
Hey, Nicole, thank you. Nicole, you and I talked about something that I would throw in there, right? There's a badge involved if they go to all 5?
Absolutely.
All right, let's make sure you guys all get to all 5 of those. It's only going to help you in the long run.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Randy.
Nicole, thank you. We appreciate it. All right, joining us now is Mr. Scott Holz, Pega's Senior Director of Delivery Excellence and Communities. Scott is one of the leaders behind Blueprint Delivered, which is helping partners turn high fidelity design into faster, more predictable delivery. Scott spent more than 2 decades working directly with partners and architect communities around the world. So if you're thinking about how Blueprint really is going to show up in delivery, Scott is the right person to hear from. If you think Scott looks familiar, you've probably seen his keynote at the community event that was presented in person in India. Scott did the keynote. He's been a hackathon judge, and he's a multiple times contributor to the Pega Partner Hour. So no one better for you to listen to on this subject, ladies and gentlemen. I give you the one and only, the esteemed Mr. Scott Holz.
Now I'm unmuted. Thank you, Randy. That's a
Scott.
fantastic introduction. I hope everybody can see my screen. I am here to talk a little bit about the Blueprint Delivered methodology. This is a bit of a teaser for the deep dive that we're going to do later on the call around getting to high fidelity, and then the really exciting rebirth of the Pega Partner Cast. Those of you who have been around the ecosystem for a while know that I used to participate in that old Partner Cast series, and we're so excited to revive it. But today I really want to talk to you about kind of the whole thinking behind Blueprint Delivered. If you're not familiar with it, you know, how we got here, and already having slide issues, how we got here. Hang on, I got some lag, I apologize. My God. All right, well, we'll just start with this slide. Essentially, you know, the mission that we wanted to accomplish with Blueprint Delivered was really to address a challenge that my other slide that you can't see very nicely summed up. You know, IDC a couple of years ago said, you know, we're introducing these new technologies, these powerful new AI-powered ways of working, but unless we actually change the way we implement software, we are not going to get the full value from these technologies. And the mission of Blueprint Delivered is, you know, as you can see, to reduce the time, cost, and complexity required to deliver enterprise software, and to take advantage of the amazing tool. I assume everyone on this call has used Blueprint, but to take advantage of that accelerated discovery process and turn it into a way that we can also accelerate delivery. And so, you know, there are three key levers for shifting process capability. And I apologize because this thing seems to be having a mind of its own, and it's on its own automation. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And this did not happen in my preview. But Randy, why don't you fill the time for 2 seconds while I just get this thing fixed?
Yeah, that's no problem, Scott. Why don't you go ahead and go off screen and we'll take care of that. You know, one of the things that Nicole and I had been talking about, if we go back to Nicole and the upcoming webinar, Nicole, can we talk about that again for folks? The subject matter is one that I want people to understand, that it's important, as you said, to go to all 5 of those webinars, to pick and choose. It's not the same information. It's not skipping around. It's more of a webinar that builds on each other from one section to the next, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What you're going to see today, what Scott's going to go through, is an overview just to understand what is Blueprint Delivered and why it's important. This webinar series is going to go into how. So how do I use this, make it a reality, so it's not just concepts or something that we think is really cool and going to save you time. It's really just putting that into action and being able to use your blueprints that you're creating throughout the sales process, your discovery process, putting them into action, importing them into Pega, and really accelerating that timeline, because you're going to end up, instead of having to build an application from scratch like you have traditionally, you, depending on your use case, could end up with an application that's 60% of the way done, and or more than that. As Blueprint continues to add more capabilities, we want to keep adding on to that so that you are getting that application to a much higher percentage of done when it gets imported into your Pega environment.
Thanks, Nicole. The other thing,
Thank you, Nicole. So I'm
Scott, you
back. Can
feeling
everybody
ready?
see my screen again?
Not yet.
All righty. Oh, that's because I had stopped sharing it.
Now we see you.
Now you see me, and now you should see my screen.
Yes.
Here
All
we go,
better.
Scott. Thank
All
you.
right. So the lesson here is never, ever change slides after you've done your dry run. In any event, no, this first slide I referred to, IDC talking about we have to change how we build software, but not fundamentally what we're doing. And so Blueprint Delivered is really focused on taking that old SDLC and reimagining it in an accelerated fashion. So our mission was to reduce the time, cost, and complexity required to deliver software. And if you were at Pega World a couple years ago, you heard Alan stand up and say we were going to reduce it by 50%. And the mission has fallen to a team that over the last year and a half has really been in the process of not just reimagining, but also testing these theories to get to a place where we really are seeing these time savings. And, the three key levers for shifting this are really obviously the technology with Blueprint, with, vibe coding, with a lot of the AI capabilities that are being introduced into Pega today. The process redesign, which is really Blueprint Delivered, and then lastly, mission and, measurement and control. So, can we really track where we're saving the time? And that's the exercise that the team has been going through for the last 18 months. But lastly, there was one more, change management. And this is the point of us getting up on stage. This is why we're doing the partner casts. This is all about how we can help you as partners adopt this way of working and try to let go of some of those old ways of working that were slowing things down. So we are available. I have a team of resources globally that are available to not only sit with your team and talk through this process, but also to act in an advisory role when you do start your first Blueprint Delivered project. So we're trying to de-risk this for you, our partners, because we believe in it so much. So what is Blueprint Delivered? It is different than what we have put out in place before around delivery approaches. It is prescriptive. It's a structured approach. It is intended not just to accelerate the delivery cycle, but to accelerate sales. It is continuously evolving, although the foundational framework of it is not going to change over time. As Blueprint develops, and we're on a 2-week development cycle for both Blueprint and the import process, and as Infinity develops, you're going to see that some of the details may change, and we will continuously update and document that. And lastly, it supports collaboration and orchestration across teams and tools. What it's not Pega Express 2.0. We intentionally made the decision to break with that Pega Express delivery approach way of talking about things and come out with this much more prescriptive way of, do this step, then do this step, then do this step. It is much more of a true methodology in terms of delivering Pega. It's not a 90-day fixed fee delivery offer. That was something that we were actually testing out last year in consulting. But it does have a goal of achieving 90-day MOP implementations. It's not just for new logos. We have guidance for how to extend an existing application and other things which you'll see further on in this presentation. It's not optional guidance. It really is a framework for how you should be working when you start your sales process with Blueprint. And lastly, it's not a one-size-fits-all process. It is very adaptable, and we do expect that you're going to need to change things around for your use cases, but we have guidance around that as well. So there are two key skill sets. You know, when we're talking about blueprint delivered, and I think you probably heard about some of this already, you know, floating around out on Pega community, in other conversations, we're reimagining kind of how we think about the resources that are working on a project. And we put them into two big categories. So one set of skills is around that solution designer. That's the person who is starting out in Blueprint. They're doing the discovery, they're identifying opportunities. They are shaping what a process would look like using Blueprint as that tool. And you know, you're going to get a good deep dive into what that high fidelity process looks like that a solution designer would be responsible for doing in the second half of this call if I hurry up and finish talking and give Anthony some time. On the other side is the solution builder. This is traditionally what we've thought of as the system architect, senior system architect, LSA. We are reimagining that as the platform changes and as we're working with an existing high fidelity blueprint that's being imported, because now some of that foundational work is already done for you. And we're going to see that in a second. So blueprint delivered is a recipe. You know, at least that's how we like to talk about it. And, you know, a recipe has to have some critical ingredients. And so on the screen, you can see that there are 9 key ingredients to executing a blueprint delivered project. Starting with that vision and ending with, you know, the value that we deliver to the customer. And the beauty of blueprint and really one of the foundational concepts of blueprint delivered is that there is a connection between that vision and that value that is driven through the blueprint all the way to the end. And so I'm not going to list each of these for you, but you can read them on the screen. You know, going to high fidelity with your blueprint is the thing that gives you an accurate estimation. It's the thing that sets you up for your import. Leveraging existing tools like, you know, CI/CD pipeline and Constellation and, you know, working through our tool to refine that vision, and then in cases where you need to do that data migration to get to that core value. A lot of this is being, you know, accelerated with, you know, vibe coding that we're going to be talking more and more about as we introduce 26. But then it's powered by these 3 core tools: Pega Blueprint, a lot of work that's happening in App Studio, not Dev Studio. And then our assumption is that this will almost exclusively be new work that you're doing on Pega Cloud. We have found that it's so much easier for our clients to be supported, to be successful when they use Pega Cloud. We're really pushing as many of our clients in that direction as possible. So as I said, this golden thread that takes us through what we have chunked out into 3 key areas: the blueprinting phase, the authoring phase, and the value activation phase. And with those 3 key areas, there are a number of on-ramps. So how do I come to a blueprint delivered project? The first one is, you know, for new workflows. New workflows are an obvious choice for blueprint delivered because we are, you know, in a new environment. We may be working with a new client. This is a perfect time to introduce this new way of working. But we're also seeing opportunities with existing environments where we're building new workflows. So, you know, I'm extending an existing application. I'm creating some new cases to supplement something that's already happening. In this case, you can still use Blueprint. You can still use Blueprint delivered. Where you would make changes would be around the import aspect of this. And again, go to the partner cast because you're going to see an example or multiple examples of how that will be handled in an actual situation. Our other 2 on-ramps you've heard a lot about: heritage modernization, where we're leveraging the Pega signature tool. A much better way, we think, to upgrade and modernize your applications. And then lastly, legacy transformation, again, something we've been talking about for a long time, where Blueprint can consume all of these existing artifacts and tools, resources, you know, videos of your existing workflows, whatever, source material you bring. Blueprint can then do that transformation to a much more, something that will turn into a Pega workflow. And then again, because we have the blueprint, we want to launch ourselves into that blueprint delivered approach. So let's break this down a little bit further. We talked about the 3 phases: authoring, blueprinting, authoring, and value activation. If we look at what's inside of each of those, in blueprinting phase, we have discovery. So this can start and should start in the sales cycle. We're bringing it through that process from discovery to design, where we're working directly with our client. Those of you who've been here a while, Pega used to talk about DCO all the time, direct capture of objectives. Blueprint is kind of the ultimate expression of how you do DCO today. It's AI assisted, but we're still getting that feedback from the client. We're making changes, and we're doing it very quickly. We're previewing it in Blueprint so that they can see how that's impacting their flow and what their screens are going to look like. We move into prepare, which is obviously the something we would do in any event. But then with import, we're immediately creating that foundation under authoring. As we go through the rest of that process, we see the work that you would typically do when you're building a Pega application. But that upfront piece is where we're getting a lot of the acceleration right now. And the key, in blueprinting phase, for example, we talked about, we have project kickoff, application discovery, high fidelity blueprinting, estimation, project readiness. Those are the actual activities that we're doing in this phase. And then what we have done as Pega is we actually blueprinted the process of doing blueprint delivered. So we have broken down each of those phases into a series of steps and stages so that you can see where exactly, what do you do next? And all of that has been documented on Pega Docs. So if you go to pega.com, you will actually find articles on each of the steps related to blueprint. So the whole point is that not only did we create a methodology that is something that we expect will help you, but we have documented all of that, and we've gotten down to the document stage for each of these, and we're constantly updating and improving these. So it's another resource that is available to you as you start out on your blueprint delivered journey. I quickly want to talk about, how this relates to the sales process, because blueprint delivered, we talk about from a delivery methodology standpoint, but that blueprinting phase is also part of your sales cycle. So, up and see Pega's various steps in the sales cycle, where we would do a vision proposal, we would get to a detailed discovery, we would be prototyping a solution, putting together a delivery proposal. This maps exactly to the things that you can do with Blueprint, where you're identifying the best candidate workflows because you have gone out and blueprinted a bunch of processes at your client. Working with your client, you take maybe one of those blueprints that was selected as the one you want to pursue, and now you start co-creating that with the client, where you're in a discovery workshop, you're doing this hands-on. Optionally, you can leverage the test drive capability. This is something where we have been doing a very fast turnaround of a POC based on that blueprint, where they can get a little more hands-on. You should always be working with the preview process in Blueprint so that the client sees what they can expect to see. But the test drive gets a little deeper and lets you really play with the application in a way that they couldn't. But again, much faster. This is not an old style POC where we're out there for 3 months, and developing this. We get to an offer, but because we have a high fidelity blueprint, we've also been able to do an estimate, an accurate estimate using the estimator tool. We've had feedback recently from a number of partners that the estimator has gotten better and better and is actually very close to their own estimates that they're doing with their own tooling. So we're really pleased with that. And then finally, as we move into selling direct to clients, we have the ability to make offers on AW Marketplace. I'm not the expert in that part, and so I'm not going to talk about it very much.
That's all right, Scott. We're going to bring somebody on for that in the next session.
Perfect. So again, this is just kind of a deep dive into that first phase, the blueprinting phase, and I can't overemphasize how important that blueprinting phase is because that's setting you up for all the rest of your delivery. But when you want to realize the full value of Blueprint Delivered, we have to go beyond that. So, we get the benefit of blueprinting, then we get the benefit of importing that blueprint. So now we've created our whole foundation of the application, and then we have more things that we can do, leveraging Constellation, which by default is what you're going to get if you're doing a blueprint. But Constellation minimizes that amount of customization that you're doing on your UI. Not only does that make it faster, but it also makes it, much more upgradable and, a forever application rather than having to be concerned what happens the next time they hit an upgrade. Leveraging the cloud and Pega AI at scale, things like that, DevOps Assistant, Gen AI authoring, and then, other tools, deployment manager, automated testing, agile workbench, which some of you probably have never used, but is leveraged very heavily in the refinement phase of Blueprint Delivered. So that's why I really emphasize, don't just believe me, go watch the partner casts, see what is happening with hands-on examples of people really doing this work, and how we really believe you can get to a 50% faster time to delivery. Just very quickly, because this is not my area of expertise, but we have the same process in development for one-to-one CE. So we have not forgotten our friends who are using CDH. It's a different process, but it's the same flow. And so you'll be hearing more about that in the future as well. So just keep in mind, Blueprint Delivered focused on workflow, one-to-one CE Blueprint Delivered focused on CDH. And then lastly, before I go, I want to give one more shout out on the partner cast. I think I've done it like 9 times here, but I can't emphasize enough how exciting and interesting and valuable this is going to be for anybody who's interested in really seeing how this is done and getting a great taste for it.
Yeah, and with that, we put a link in the chat. Nicole put a link in the chat for the registration for the partner series.
Excellent. So follow that up. If you forget to click the link now, go to community and you can find it out there under the events.
Right. Scott, we had a question that came in, actually, one that's
Sure.
not so much related for you, but Anupam, I'll get that out to you. And then we got a question that says, we've tried blueprints from scratch for projects, but how would it help in existing projects? Example, we have an application for policy submission already. How can it help in designing renewals or midterm adjustments?
That's a great question that I don't have an answer to right now. If you're looking at extending an application, so if for example, you had an application where you needed to add a new case type, Blueprint would be a great way to imagine what that that process looks like. And then when you're working with an existing application, the magic is all in the import, because Blueprint gives you the opportunity to generate new code for the workflow, but it also gives you the opportunity to inherit existing data models, embedded data, processes, etc. So at the import stage, you now have the option to say, oh yeah, well, I want to use all of this existing process, but I want to add on this piece. And so again, if you watch the partner cast, I'm sure they're going to cover that material. Or if you go out to the docs.pega.com and look at the how we've documented all of this. So you can absolutely do it, but that's where the magic has to happen in the delivery process.
But every once in a while, those questions come out that are a bit more specific. And in case anybody doesn't know, if there's a question that comes up, I review all the questions again after, and I reach back out to people and get some more specific answers, which we can do on that one. So Scott, except for the glitch, great presentation. Thank you very much for coming in. And it's never easy to talk to a couple hundred people, man. I really appreciate you doing that today.
I really appreciate the opportunity, Randy. And let's make sure we have enough time for Anthony.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, speaking of, next up, Anthony Leonardi, our Senior Manager of Specialist Solutions Consulting at Pega. And the person behind, many of you already know his voice from being behind our What's New in Blueprint walkthroughs. Anthony leads our advanced platform specialist team, and he spends time right at the intersection of product innovation and partner execution. He's also been behind the scenes helping shape Partner Hour content with me. So it's great to finally have him back here in front of everybody. And as a less technical, Anthony becomes a very interesting person. He is what I call, and he calls, a hobby collector. When he's not killing it here at Pega, yeah, you can find him doing everything from hiking in the Pemmiloop in the New Hampshire White Mountains to playing the banjo on thebanjobook.com. Anthony, didn't think I knew about that one. To making latte art designs and then making apps so his mom can better use Facebook and Gmail, which I love, my friend. And if that all isn't enough, the man simply has the best beard in the business. In the words of Captain Kirk, Mr. Leonardi, you have the con.
Thank you very much, Randy. You can hear me okay, everyone? Hopefully, thumbs up.
Looking good.
So I'm going to give everyone a second. I'm going to ask a couple questions. I want to see emojis come across. So get your emoji reactions ready. All right. So who here has heard the term high fidelity blueprinting? I'm not seeing any. Are you guys seeing it?
Yep, they're popping up.
All right, all right. Now, oh, I see them up in the top. Okay, lots of people have heard about. There was a frowny crying face. I don't know. Hopefully that's okay. All right, all right, all right. So who here has a really good understanding of what it means for a blueprint to be high fidelity? Thumbs up, thumbs down, maybe. Let's see.
Not quite as many, but a few.
Yeah,
there they go.
Thumbs up, thumbs. Okay, this is more what I expect. The turtle, I love that one. All right, so this bit of the presentation, not really focused on the specifics around how to achieve high fidelity. I'm going to cover that a little bit at the start, but more of it is about like what aspects of a high fidelity blueprint actually impact things as part of your project, your sales process, et cetera. Like, why does it actually matter, the nuts and bolts of it? Why does high fidelity matter? And so I love this presentation. I hope you guys too. I'll start with the 5 steps to high fidelity because we got to clear up, what is this high fidelity thing? Well, it means filling out the application context in your blueprint, right? That's really important. You need full descriptions of like, what are we trying to accomplish here? It means defining the workflows that are going to be in your application, right? It means getting the details of those workflows nailed. And I think maybe some of you have already kind of discovered that what I'm doing here is just mapping out each of the steps of the blueprinting phase. So hopefully none of this is a surprise. But really, like, that is it, right? Take each step of your blueprint and just complete it. And what does it actually look like to be complete? So it means, well, on your application context, you've got documents uploaded and BPMN diagrams of processes, requirements documents. On the workflows tab, you have all your case types defined with versions and MLP releases. On workflow details, you have the stages and steps that make sense. There are alternate stages. Your assignments have all the fields and notes describing the outcome. Required fields are marked as required. You have sub-processes when relevant. Your decision shapes are mapped out to where they go in the process depending on the outcome of the decision. SLAs are defined, and now that SLAs can be configured in the product. You have your case hierarchy, creation fields, attachment types. All of this stuff is actually captured and completed, because at the end of the day, the more you do here, the less you have to do later. On the data integrations tab, your objects actually have systems of record. So if everything says Pega, that's a big red flag, right? Personas are another really important one. You've got your releases mapped, but also case and data and channel access is mapped out, because that's going to be your jumping off point for all your access groups once this blueprint is imported. So all of these things help on import, but it also impacts your preview, right? Your preview should look as close to a real application as possible, because if it looks incorrect here, it's going to look incorrect after import, and that's going to just be technical debt for you to take care of down the line. So if you can take care of it up front, right? If there's an attachment field and you actually capture it as an attachment field in Blueprint, you don't have to worry about it after import. You don't have to change anything. It's just going to be the right thing. So I think that's it, right? So make sure preview looks good. Make sure all the things are actually captured and completed. And that's really like the spirit behind High Fidelity. For all the details, Scott and Nicole, you go to the partner podcast after this, do that and get your badge. And I think you'll have a better handle on like the specifics of the nitty gritty. But what I really want to do is, like, why does this matter, right? Like, okay, great, I'm capturing all this detail, but like, how is it going to help me, right? And so I'm a sales consulting, so I'm upfront in the process here. But I want to sell software better, right? Preview is a huge help for that for us, right? Preview is basically a demo, right? I capture some requirements for the customer. I use our new AI assistant in Blueprint to rapidly bake out those processes and capture the data model and the decisions. And I jump into preview and it looks and feels real with the sample data that looks and feels real. That's hugely impactful. But on the delivery side, that can be impactful too, because it's going to be driving kind of like, I think of it like UAT light, right? It's really helpful for stakeholder alignment, but it's also helpful for user buy-in to make sure that you're heading in the right path. You're not going to have a lot of surprises on the back end of your implementation. So it helps you sell, it helps you do previews and test drives. It also helps get the delivery estimate right. So Scott was talking about earlier that as time goes on, that estimator is getting more and more accurate, and we can talk about why a little bit later in this presentation. And obviously, the more you capture in a Blueprint, the easier it is to capture those requirements and the less work you have to do to translate those requirements to like the Pega idea of like what models and all that kind of stuff. So it's actually a faster start for requirements gathering. And then obviously on import, you're automating a lot of the app development. So application build is going to be faster. And then finally, when you create like this really engaging collaborative experience that's AI supported with your customers on both the business and IT side, like the actual outcome of that, yeah, good Pega delivery practices. But what we're seeing at our customers is we're actually creating these like transformation factories internal to those organizations where they're just very organically using Blueprint to map out projects that they want to run and processes that they have internally. And a lot of those are turning into Pega applications and some of them aren't. But what's important is that Blueprint is becoming their core collaboration platform for actually bridging that gap between what the business wants and how the IT and delivery folks are going to actually deliver it. So I think all of these are really important towards driving High Fidelity. And if I were going to boil those 6 things down to 3, right? We want a compelling preview. We want really good estimates because customers want to know how much and how long, and they want it to be right. And we want import automations to be maximized, because the more you do that, the less you have to do on that back end, right? And the faster you can deliver value to your customer. So I'm going to actually go into each of these three, and we're going to talk real nuts and bolts. Can I get some thumbs up for everyone following? Am I going too fast, too slow? Hopefully not too slow. I don't think I can go faster. But all right, cool. Got some thumbs up going. Good. So let's start with preview. Preview is like one of my favorite things. I use it all the time. And in fact, with the AI assistant, I spend a lot of time in preview and do a lot of my blueprinting right from there, which I encourage you guys to try out. But so my slides are kind of formatted in a very specific way. The left is going to be like blueprint config, and the right is sort of the outcome that is the result of that configuration. And in preview, I've organized my slides into two areas. The first is the field types and options that you have available to you. And what you want to do, the point of this is you want to use the rich set of options and field types that you have to drive a compelling preview. And the first one is attachment fields, right? If you add an attachment field to your blueprint, when you preview that, you can fake upload a document. It feels very, very real. You're not actually uploading anything, but it looks like you are. So from an experience perspective, I actually feel what my application will be like. And there's very few substitutes for that. Like you don't get that from requirements on paper. The second is pick lists. Nothing is going to be more real to a customer than having a dropdown with the actual values that they care about, right? And also, there's no translation issue between what are the options that you might have versus what are the options that you do have? And then capture those here. And of course, on the import in the back end, you're going to get that in the pick list automatically. So here, when we're running through preview, instead of having Gen AI come up with the list, it's right there. And it's the correct thing. Embedded data. For those of you who haven't blueprinted in a while, we now have the ability to capture embedded data. So if you want a table list view in your preview, or more complex form capture where you're capturing just a few aspects of customer as opposed to the whole customer object, you can do that now in Blueprint and specify that in Blueprint, and then preview reflects that directly. So when you're talking about complex form capture and complex data models, take advantage of all the resources you have available to you in Blueprint config so that you get the outcome you want. And then finally, this is the second part of what I was just saying, right? Where your embedded data allows you to pick just a subset of the fields on the object for form capture. So in this case, we're verifying the customer identity, and the customer object has name, phone number, email address, and customer tier. I don't care if you're gold or platinum to verify who you are. So I'm just going to leave that off the form, obviously. And you can specify that in Blueprint now. I think that's actually new as of 2 or 3 weeks ago. So play around. And then the second section of this, outside of the direct, obvious thing where you're configuring the specific thing that you want, field descriptions matter more than you know. Those notes fields that you see in Blueprint, where we kind of talk about all the things that we couldn't capture directly, 4 weeks ago, we couldn't capture SLAs, which we can now. So we put SLA details in notes fields. But notes fields do a lot more than just capture the delta of what the Blueprint can capture directly versus what you need to know on the back end, right? It actually drives a lot of what you experience in preview. So for instance, data references, right? Data references are just sample data that is generated by Pega Gen AI when you're in preview. And this can get tricky, right? So here I see a product data model for a telco company, and that product has a name. And, that's an important field. That's the first primary field, and it's going to drive what I see in the dropdown. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But what's neat here is I have the description of name, and I'm in sales, so I do stuff like this a lot, where I'm just the fastest thing to type is just name for the name of the field and description of the field. But what that results in is Gen AI being confused about what name actually means. So we get things like Jane Smith and Michael Johnson, which are not names of products for a cell phone product, right? So how do we fix that? So we change the description from name to something more descriptive, right? Things like unlimited data or no roaming, no problems. And what Gen AI can do is use that information to give you a more compelling list, right? So just like pick lists give you a deterministic way to figure out what are the actual values. When we're dealing with sample data, Pega Gen AI is generating it. So in the notes field and description fields, use that as your opportunity to drive better, more compelling experiences in preview. Calculated fields. This is a fun one. I bet you didn't know. Actually, thumbs up if you did know this. But if you actually type the calculation in, explain what it does in the description field, did you know that the sample data that's generated for that field, the Gen AI is going to actually try to do the calculation for you. It's going to try to be smart about it. So in this example is the easiest example that I tried to figure out. But basically I'm saying, I'm going to have first name, last name, and full name on a data object, right? And so I'm going to tell it in the description that full name is first name plus last name. And it does a very good job of actually doing that. And I've done numerical calculations too with some success. So you'll be surprised at how good this actually generates a compelling experience. So here we see Ethan Brown is Ethan Brown, Sophia Williams is Sophia Williams. The only one I got wrong was it gave it a first name of John Doe. So, but I'll let that one slide. So you can create these really compelling previews just by taking advantage of the description field in a more robust manner. You know what? So one thing I didn't have, I just found this yesterday. And you can go to expert circles and Blueprint, you'll see my post, but there's a new tip on preview. One of the things I've always struggled with is that I could never get a text area box to show for like longer form fields. If in your field description, you use words like description and summary and tell it what it should be summarizing, you'll get longer sample data for the field. And if Blueprint generates sample data greater than 30 characters, it will use a text area instead of a text input. So pro tip, experiment with that. And again, you'll get even more compelling previews that feel more real to the users. So estimation. All right, this is going to be very, very fast. When you're using the estimator tool, if your Blueprint is low fidelity, that means there are fewer details about the project. And so your estimations will be low because it's using that as its guide. So if there are fewer things to do, or there are fewer hours in the project, which is not what you want. You want a high fidelity Blueprint with as many details as are relevant to sort of scoping out the project. So you can see a very dramatic difference between like what a lo-fi Blueprint looks like and what a hi-fi Blueprint looks like. I mean, if you were this customer and you expected it was going to be less than 400 hours and you found out it was going to be almost 700, I think you'd be pretty upset, right? And you don't want those types of changes happening mid-project. So this is one of the really important reasons why high fidelity Blueprints are important, because you're going to get a more accurate result out of estimations. Cool. Should be obvious, but not always. All right, let's go move on to import. So import automations is going to look very similar, like the guidance here is going to look very similar to preview, because at the end of the day, the preview that you see in Blueprint is more or less going to be the app that you get out of the Blueprint when you import it. So some pro tips here, and I'm going to start simple, right? So left again is Blueprint config, right is what you get in Infinity. And I promise what you see on the right, I didn't do anything. Like I imported the Blueprint and this is the app that I got out of it. And so the first easy one is if you generate a case and you define the case lifecycle in Blueprint, you're going to get that case lifecycle in Infinity. That should be obvious, right? Another obvious one now, but maybe not, is that when you, on the assignment, the reason it's important to define the fields and whether they're required and that, all that, and make sure those fields use the right types, is because on the Infinity side, we generate the views for every single assignment step based on the configuration and based on the fields that were on the screen. So you get what you see in Blueprint. All those views are generated automatically, right? That's huge, huge. Next is the full page views of the case. So anyone who's familiar with Constellation, which I hope you all are, the case full page view is really important, right? That's what allows users to more efficiently process work and have a consistent experience across applications. And so getting the data right and the position of that data right is what sort of drives that efficiency. So how do we use Blueprint to accomplish that? Well, all of the case data fields in your Blueprint are going to end up in the details view in the case full page view. And I know a lot of you are just saying, oh my God, I'm going to have like 250 fields here. Maybe you're going to have a lot, but remember, there's a best practice that most of your fields should be in embedded objects, data references, and complex types. And you can have groupings, right? So you shouldn't have too many scalar case level fields that will show up in your details view. And you might have a few more than you want, but on the Infinity side, it's trivial to remove them. The second is all of your primary fields that you mark as primary in your blueprint are going to end up in the summary view over on the left, in your case full page view, in the order that they are in blueprint. So remember, these are reorderable on purpose. What you see is what you get in terms of order, and that's a really cool tip. And you might also notice that complaint type right here in the summary view is actually a complex type. So we can do things like preview and open up in a new tab. And we'll talk about more how we drive that in a second. And in fact, we'll do it right now. So let's dive into the complaint category, open up the data model, and see what happens. So as you know, data model, data objects have their own full page view and have their own preview pane, similar to cases. So what drives that? Well, shouldn't be much of a surprise, right? All of the fields on the data model are going to end up in a details tab and your data objects, full page view and preview pane. You can't see it here, but it's there, trust me. All your primary fields in the order that they are in Blueprint are going to show up in the summary view of the data object. And this is where it gets kind of fun. The first primary field at the top of the list is going to be the header for your data object. And it's also going to be the display value for that object when it's in read-only. So in this case, it's in the summary view, so we see the category as the display field for it. And this is also going to show up in things like autocomplete dropdowns. The second field in the primary list is going to be the subheader in your data objects preview and full page view, which is also really handy. And now finally, around data objects, systems of record are really important. So they're going to drive accurate estimations because systems of record have integrations, and integrations take time and are costly, right? We all know that in our projects, but we're also going to get interesting stuff on the back end. So for every data object on our data and integrations tab, we're going to get a data object in App Studio. And when we define a system of record, that data object is going to be set up in simulated mode. So we're going to get the data pages for list and savable. And what's neat is they're going to be set up in simulation mode, so we actually get sample records for it. And it's very easy to extend them to configure the sourcing for them. And then you can toggle them back and forth. So right after import, because we already have sample records that are similar to what you saw in preview in Blueprint, you have a fully executable process end to end with all your dropdowns and sample data source, so it feels real while you're actually implementing those integrations, and you can toggle back and forth to do testing while things are working and not working or in different states of working. So as you're actually developing your app on the platform side, you get the benefit of that immediately, which is great for me from a demo perspective and great for my delivery partners and for you guys as you're actually implementing the application. And then finally, what I want to highlight is when we import blueprints, the blueprint import tool knows the things that it's building, and it also knows the thing that it's not, right? The things that it's not. So it creates user stories for all the work that's sort of left in your application based on what it knows about the blueprint. And what's cool here is that those user stories use that notes field. So in addition to the notes field driving a more compelling experience in preview, it also drives the contents of the user stories after import. And what's neat here is one of my favorite if you've played around with the AI assistant in Blueprint, one of my favorite things to do is to actually just tell the assistant to rewrite all of the notes fields in the case type or in my app as user stories. And it can just go bing, bang, boom. And then all of your notes fields are user stories so that when you import them, they're already in the user story language for you, which has been a big help in a lot of the projects I've seen since that AI assistant has been created. So that's it. But Blueprint moves really, really fast. Like I've already been talking to you about features that have been created since this deck was finalized a few days ago, like last week, right? So how do you actually keep up with it? Just keep in mind, this is a quick list, right, of all the things that have been released in the last month. Like if you look at October, Blueprint from October of last year is almost unrecognizable from Blueprint today. Just the amount of features and capabilities and assistance that has been added to the app is it's amazing. So make sure that you're reviewing the release notes of Blueprint, which you can find at the What's New button down at the bottom of the Blueprint. And I'll plug at the Expert Circles, the pinned post in the Blueprint Expert Circle is basically a list of video walkthroughs that I do, hands-on experiences with every new feature as they're released. So whenever a new release comes on, I just jump on and I read what it is, and then I go into a Blueprint and just try it out. And so that's a fun way people have been using to sort of keep up to date. I encourage you to do so. And when we talk about what high fidelity means as we're doing a project, high fidelity should be taking advantage of as many of the new capabilities and new features as you can. And the reason that's important is because when Blueprint releases these new things, you're capturing more information about the project. So Blueprint is released constantly. And so you can define and capture more information about the project and know more of the world within the Blueprint. And then our estimator tool, they don't keep up with it every 2 weeks, but they regularly update it to keep up with Blueprint so that it's delivering estimates based on all of the information that Blueprint captures. And then the automation at import you get, well, what about that, right? Because platform releases yearly or bi-yearly or twice a year. So what happens then? Well, remember in 25 and backported to 24, we actually modularized the import process. And this is released almost with every release of Blueprint. So it's taking advantage of all the new capabilities and features of Blueprint. And so what you get out of this is this like ridiculous circle of like engagement where Blueprint's driving things forward. You're getting more accurate delivery estimates because you're capturing more information and it's aware of it. And also you're having faster projects because there's more automation on the back end from all the updates of Blueprint, and those feed back into each other. And what that creates is like great customer experiences now, but an even better customer experience in 2 weeks when the new version of Blueprint is released. So every 2 weeks, keep up with what's new so you can take advantage of it and just drive better and better and better customer experiences from, upfront in the sales process through all the way through the delivery of MLP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's my spiel. Thank you very much. Drive over to the Expert Circles for Blueprint. I post there, but more importantly, folks with Scott's organization are posting there and answering questions. I encourage you to really fully participate in that space. It's great. Thank you.
Anthony, there it is. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted.
Nice beard, man.
I couldn't let you be the only one.
Almost as good as mine.
Not quite. So Anthony, a couple quick things. I have a lot of people, this is why we called this the high fidelity and why it matters. You have a lot of people who say to me, depending on who I talk to, Randy, this is great for sales. Or, yeah, this is really great for sales. And then they say to me, this is really great for building the blueprints, and then they, for building the project. And then they say, hey, this is really great for delivery. And I gotta take this off, man. I don't know how you do that. That is not an easy thing. All right. And I think that's the thing that this really drives at, Anthony, right? This is good for everything. It's good from the starting point. It's good to the delivery, to the implementation point, and it's good for everything in between. It's going to bring in, your technical people. It's going to bring in your salespeople. It's going to bring your users in. I just don't think we do a good enough conversation with people to tell them how important Blueprint is, because we keep asking them to do a blueprint, and it's important that you understand how to do it. But when you bring it through the whole process and you put everything into it and it becomes high fidelity, that's why it matters, right? Like it really is a great, great tool. So Anthony, we have 24 questions, and in the interest of everybody, and we're just hitting time, I will answer everybody individually on email. Unless you want to look at a couple of these real quick.
I can take a couple, but I'd encourage folks to ask questions in Expert Circles.
Expert Circles. Let's talk about that real quick. You talked about it. Real easy, folks. Community.pega.com. If you're on this call, you're already in community, whether you know it or not. Just go there. You'll be logged right in and go to Expert Circles. it's an unbelievable place where there are people from Pega that are weighing in. There are people who are your cohorts working in. There are people from all over the spread of the spectrum they're working. You get real answers, and you can really get some things there. Unbelievable people working there. It's unbelievable, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the two things I want to say here is yeah, Blueprint is an amazing tool, Randy, to what you were saying around driving business value as fast as possible, right? But to your point, people are like, well, I'm in Blueprint and I have this discovery call. I don't get all the information. I create the blueprint and import it. You're missing an important step, which is engagement with the customer, right? The whole value of Blueprint is that you can share it with anyone and have them jump in and click preview and experience it. You're able to engage the business in a completely different way where they feel like they're a true participant in the process and they have buy-in and can actually collaborate in a new way. And so if you're not doing that like hyper agile collaboration with the business, you're not taking full advantage of Blueprint in the way that you could. So I think that's like the one bullet I'd add where that's sort of the game changer, right? If you take away this is Blueprint enables you to collaborate in a brand new way with your customers. And I encourage you to try that and experiment with it and see what kind of value you can drive.
I always love when someone says collaborate, because in my head, I always say, stop, collaborate, and listen. In the words of Vanilla Ice. All right. Listen, that brings us to the close of another Pega Partner Hour. Great thanks to everybody that shows up here month to month. And this couldn't happen if you didn't. And to all the new visitors today, we hope you come back. Especially today, thank you for showing up, Miss Lynn Swenson. And as always, none of this happens without our guy, John Lynch. For our presenters today, Nicole Rothermill, Scott Holz, and Anthony Leonardi, I can't thank you all enough for putting this on your calendar and making this happen. For everyone else, we'll see you next on April 10th. If you see me before I see you, please stop me and say hi. Until then, sell and be well. Thanks for joining.